Mom, we've been talking, and we think it might be time to start looking at your options. He said it between bites of toast, eyes still on his phone, like he was reading a grocery list out loud, rather than telling his 68-year-old mother to leave the home she'd owned for 31 years. I set my fork down slowly. I'm sorry. My son looked up, not with guilt, not even with hesitation, just the flat patience of someone who'd rehearsed this and was mildly annoyed the other person wasn't following the script. We've been thinking about the future, he said, yours and ours. And honestly, Mom, a house this size, it's a lot for one person. There are some really nice communities. Senior communities, his wife added from across the table, not looking up from her yogurt. Brittany always did her best damage while pretending to be occupied with something else. I looked at my son, who had been sleeping in the upstairs bedroom for 3 years now. My son, who'd come to me after his business went under, the landscaping company he'd built on a loan I'd co-signed, and sat right here at this table with his hands folded and his eyes red and said, "Just until we get back on our feet, Mom. 6 months, maybe. That was 38 months ago." "You've been talking," I said. He nodded, relieved. "We love you. We want what's best for you." I picked up my fork and finished my breakfast. I didn't say another word, and neither did he. He took that as agreement, I think. He always took my silence as agreement. That was his first mistake. I built this house the way you build a life, slowly, stubbornly, with less money than you needed, and more will than seemed reasonable. My husband Ray and I had bought it in 1993, a plain colonial on a quiet street, and we'd made it ours over 3 decades. I picked every floor tile, argued with the contractor about the kitchen ceiling until he did it right. Planted the rose bushes along the south fence the spring after we moved in and tended them every April since. Ray passed 7 years ago. Heart attack on a Thursday morning, coffee cup still in his hand. After the funeral, after everyone left, and the casserole dishes were returned and the sympathy cards stopped coming, I sat in the living room for 1 whole day without moving. Not from grief alone, though there was plenty of that. I sat there because I needed to feel the house around me. The way the afternoon light came through the west window. The way the 3rd stair from the bottom creaked on the left side. The particular sound the house made when the heat came on and the pipes woke up. This house was Ray, this house was ours, and now it was mine. Darren showed up 8 months after the funeral. His business had been bleeding for 2 years. I'd known it and said nothing because he hadn't asked. He and Brittany had run through their savings, their credit, then their pride, in that order. They needed somewhere to land. I said yes. Of course I said yes. He's my son. I paid off $22,000 in credit card debt so they could start clean. Signed my car over to Brittany's name when theirs got repossessed. Watched the grandkids 4 days a week so they didn't need daycare. Put Darren's name on my gym membership, my AAA account, my streaming subscriptions, because it was just easier. I did all of this without keeping score. That's what you do. Or so I believe. I found the papers 3 days after that breakfast conversation. I hadn't been snooping. I was leaving a birthday card on the counter for Brittany. Her birthday was Thursday, and there was a folder sitting beside the coffee maker with a realtor's logo on the tab. I almost walked past it. I didn't. Inside, a comparative market analysis for this address, comparable sales from the neighborhood, an estimated listing price, a renovation budget with items listed as value-add improvements, the kitchen, the master bath, the dated living room. There was a sticky note in Darren's handwriting. If she's out by end of Q1, we can list by spring. I stood in my kitchen for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the wall made its small tick, the one I'd stopped hearing years ago but heard clearly now. End of Q1 was 6 weeks away. They hadn't asked me to think about options. They had already made the decision. They were waiting for me to cooperate with my own removal. I put the folder back exactly as I'd found it, placed the birthday card on top, went upstairs to my room, sat on the edge of my bed, and breathed. I didn't cry. Crying takes energy, and I had better uses for mine. There's a drawer on the right side of my desk I've been keeping for 20 years. Not for sentiment, for accuracy. A canceled check for $14,000 made out to Darren's LLC when he was first starting out. just to get you off the ground, sweetheart." He'd cried when I handed it to him. A receipt from an auto shop, $840 for a transmission repair on the truck. Brittany had been driving when it broke down on the interstate at 7 in the morning. She'd called me in a panic. I drove 40 minutes and wrote the check on the spot. The tuition invoice from when Darren decided at 34 to go back for his MBA. He dropped out after one semester. The charge was $11,000. I kept the receipt anyway. A hospital bill from when Brittany had emergency surgery right after they'd lost their insurance. I'd paid the difference, just under $4,000, without being asked because I happened to see it on the counter and I could, and they were drowning. I didn't tally it. I knew the number would only make me feel like I'd been keeping score, and I hadn't been. Not then. But I looked at that drawer and understood something clearly. Every dollar in it was meant to say, "I believe in you." Every dollar in it had gone unacknowledged. Somewhere along the way, helping had become expected. Expected had become assumed. And now here we were, with a sticky note setting a deadline for my departure from the home I'd paid off in 2009. I closed the drawer gently and picked up the telephone. The real one, not my cell. My address book was in the top right desk drawer, where it had always been. I found the name I was looking for, Velma Ostrander. Velma and I had known each other since college. She'd gone into estate law after her divorce, built a quiet practice out of a Victorian on the north side of town. We had lunch twice a year, Christmas cards every December. She always signed hers the same way. "Call me if you need anything. And I mean anything." She answered on the second ring. "Velma," I said, "it's me." "Lord," she said, "I haven't heard that voice in months. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," I said. "I need some help, the quiet kind." There was a pause. Not the uncertain kind, the listening kind. "Tell me," she said. Velma's office smelled like old books and good coffee, and she had 2 green velvet chairs across from her desk that had been there since I'd first visited 20 years ago. I sat in the left one, the one I always took. She laid it out plainly, the way she always did. The house was in my name alone. Ray and I had paid it off 16 years ago. Darren had no legal interest, no claim, no leverage of any kind. She said it the way you say something that should be obvious to everyone. "He can't stop you," she said. "I know that." "Does he know you know that?" I smiled. "No." She nodded. "Good. Let's keep it that way a little longer." She had a colleague who handled private listings. Homes sold through personal networks. No yard signs, no internet listings, no fanfare. Serious buyers, the kind who moved quickly and quietly. She happened to know a couple, she said, who'd been looking for exactly this sort of house. He was a retired school principal. She'd taught 3rd grade for 28 years. They wanted something with a real neighborhood, good bones, a place that already had a life lived in it. "When can you meet them?" Velma asked. "Whenever they're ready." She reached for her phone. "I'll call them today." The couple came on a Tuesday afternoon. I made coffee and cut slices of lemon cake I'd been planning to bake for weeks, not to impress them. I just wanted the house to smell like itself while it still could. They were unhurried. He had the kind of handshake that meant something. She walked through the rooms without commenting on anything that needed updating, because she understood those weren't flaws, they were evidence of a life. She paused in the kitchen doorway and looked at the window above the sink for a long moment. "The light is just wonderful," she said, quietly to herself as much as to me. I showed them everything. The porch that caught the morning sun. The way the hallway curved before it reached the bedrooms. The pantry I'd converted from a closet when the original kitchen storage wasn't enough. He asked how long I'd lived here. 31 years, I said. My husband and I bought it together. He's been gone 7 years, but it still feels like his house, too. He nodded. You can feel that. The whole place has been cared for. They didn't ask why I was selling. I was more grateful for that than I can properly say. At the door, she turned to me. We would take very good care of it, she said, not as a sales pitch, just as a promise between two people who understood what that meant. I believed her. Velma called the next morning. They wanted to make an offer. Cash, full asking price, 30-day close, no contingencies. I said yes. I signed the listing agreement on a Thursday. while Darren was at his office. The job he'd finally found 8 months ago, the one I'd watched him interview for from the kitchen, listening through the wall and willing it to go well. And while Brittany was at her spin class, the house was quiet, just the refrigerator, just the clock. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Darren had laid out his plans for my future so casually. The same table where I'd found the folder with the sticky note about Q1. I drank my tea. Then I signed everything. I didn't tell Darren. Not when he came home that evening and didn't ask how my day had gone. Not when Brittany left a brochure for a senior community on the counter, Pinehurst Gardens, vibrant living for active seniors, and pretended she'd just seen it somewhere and thought I might find it interesting. Not when my granddaughter Lucy called just to talk, the way she did sometimes, and I sat on the bed in my room and spoke with her for 40 minutes about nothing important and everything that was, and felt the particular warmth of being genuinely loved by a child who doesn't yet know how rare that is. Lucy is 11. She has her father's dark eyes and, thank God, very little else of his at the moment. She knocked before entering my room. She said please and thank you without being prompted. She asked him questions about what things were like when I was young, and she listened to the answers with her whole face. She was the only person in that house who still saw me as a person rather than a piece of furniture that had been there so long no one noticed it anymore. I started packing. Not everything, just what mattered. My mother's quilt. The recipe tin that had belonged to my grandmother, the one with the handwritten cards inside, her penmanship slanted and permanent. The photograph of Ray and me at our first apartment, both of us squinting into the sun, young and certain of almost nothing. The books I'd actually read, not the ones I'd kept for appearances. I moved boxes to my car in the early mornings, before the house woke up. The closing was on a Wednesday, 10 in the morning. I signed my name 22 times. My handwriting was steady. Afterward, I drove to the bank and set up a new account. Most of the proceeds went toward the cottage I'd already arranged. A craftsman bungalow 2 towns over, 1 block from the farmer's market, 2 blocks from the public library. I'd signed the lease the week before and paid first and last without flinching, because there are moments when overlap is worth the cost. The rest I put in a trust. Velma had helped me structure it. I named myself the primary beneficiary and trustee. The secondary was Lucy. I left on a Saturday morning, while Darren was at his golf game, and Brittany had taken the kids to her mother's for the day. I walked through the house one last time, not to grieve. I'd done that already, slowly, in pieces, over the past few weeks. I walked through it to say thank you. That's the right word for it. You don't abandon a place that held you through the worst things. You thank it. I thanked the living room, where I'd brought Ray home from the hospital after his first cardiac scare, and he'd fallen asleep in the armchair with the television on, and I'd covered him with a blanket and sat on the floor beside him, and felt, against all reason, lucky. I thanked the kitchen, where I'd made 31 years of ordinary dinners, where I'd taught Darren to scramble eggs. When he was 9, where I'd cried by myself after Ray's funeral with the water running so no one would hear. I thanked the upstairs hallway, still with the small scuff on the baseboard, where Darren had dragged his suitcase down incorrectly when he left for college at 17. I'd never painted over it. I never got around to it. I was glad now that I hadn't. I left an envelope on the kitchen counter with Darren's name on the front. Inside, a copy of the closing documents, the contact information for the title company. Nothing else. No letter, no explanation, no apology. The documents were the explanation. He was a grown man. He could read them. I locked the front door and put the key in my purse. The movers came at 9 and had everything loaded in under 2 hours. I did not look back when we pulled away. I didn't need to. I carried everything that mattered already. At 2:47 that afternoon, my phone rang. Darren. I let it ring. At 2:51, again. At 3:06, a text. Mom, what is this? What is going on? At 3:19, Brittany, are you serious right now? You sold the house? Without saying anything. At 3:24, Darren again, and this time a voicemail. I listened to it the next morning while the coffee was brewing. His voice was controlled in the way it gets when he's trying not to sound as shaken as he is. Mom, call me. I don't understand what you were thinking. We live here. The kids live here. You didn't give us any warning. Please call me back. I made dinner. Soup from scratch because I had the time now and a kitchen that was entirely mine. I ate at my own table in my own chair, listening to rain against the window. I did not call him back that night. He called 11 more times before I answered. I was on the cottage porch when I finally picked up, 4 days later. Morning, coffee in hand, the farmer's market starting up 2 blocks over. I could hear the faint sound of it. Voices, a cart, the particular bright noise of a Saturday beginning well. Mom, his voice was different, not tight anymore, tired. I'm home, I said. A pause. Can I come see you? I gave him the address and made a fresh pot of coffee. He arrived looking like a man who hadn't slept properly in days. He stood in the cottage doorway and looked around, and something in his face shifted. Not quite guilt, not yet understanding, somewhere between the two. We sat at my small kitchen table. He wrapped his hands around the mug and didn't drink. You could have just told us, he said. We would have found somewhere else. You'd already found somewhere else. For me, I just adjusted the timeline. He started to say something and stopped. I found the folder, Darren, with the realtor's estimate, with your note about Q1. He went still in the way people do when they've been caught not just doing something wrong, but thinking something wrong. It's a different kind of stillness. I was trying to plan, he said. You were planning to move me out of my own home without asking me. He didn't answer, which was its own answer. I paid your debts, I said. Not cruelly, just plainly the way you state facts that need to be acknowledged. I signed over my car. I stayed available every day for 3 years. Not because you asked, because I love you. I thought eventually. I stopped, found the right words. I thought eventually you'd look up. His jaw moved. His eyes were wet, but he held it. Ray would have cried. Darren always fought it. I didn't mean to make you feel like you didn't matter, he said. I know, I said. That's almost the hardest part. He stayed another hour. We didn't resolve everything. 30 years of slowly becoming invisible doesn't get resolved over coffee. But something shifted. He asked about the cottage. He asked if I needed help with anything. He looked at me when I talked. At the door, he stopped. Lucy keeps asking when she can come see you. Something loosened in my chest. She can come anytime. He nodded. Then quietly, I was wrong, Mom, about the folder, about all of it. I don't know when I started thinking of you as something to manage. I do, I said, but I said it gently, because cruelty would have been too easy, and easy things are rarely useful. He left quieter than he'd arrived. Lucy came the following Saturday. She brought a loaf of banana bread she'd made herself, uneven, slightly overbrowned along one edge, and held it out with both hands like it was something precious, because to her it was. We cooked together that afternoon. We looked at old photographs. We sat on the front porch and watched a pair of cardinals argue over the feeder I'd already hung. She asked me what my favorite year had been. I told her 1994, the year we planted the rose bushes along the south fence of the old house. And Ray and I had disagreed about the placement for 2 solid weeks, and then found exactly the right spot. And we're both right about it, and the roses had bloomed there every May for 30 years. She liked that. She asked me to tell her more about Ray, so I did. Before she left, she looked around the cottage the way children do, slowly deciding. It feels like you, she said. It does, I agreed. She hugged me in the doorway and held on a beat longer than necessary, and I held back just as long. There is an envelope in my desk drawer with her name on the front. I wrote what's inside a few weeks ago, late at night, by the lamp in the corner. I won't give it to her for years, not until she's old enough for it to land the way I mean it to. I tell her what I want every woman to understand before she's forced to learn it the long way. That taking up space is not an imposition. That asking for what you need is not selfishness. That the people who love you correctly will never ask you to make yourself smaller to accommodate them. And at the very bottom, a postscript. If anyone ever tries to write your ending before you're ready, remember where you come from. You come from a woman who sold her house while her son was at his golf game. Not out of anger, out of clarity. You have every right to choose your own terms. Don't let anyone else set them for you. I folded the letter sealed the envelope, and put it away for when the time is right. Last evening, I sat on the porch after dinner and watched the light go the way it does this time of year, turning gold and then going fast, the sky holding on to pink at the edges for just a few minutes before letting it go. The neighbor's dog wandered over and sat beside my chair without being invited. I didn't send him away. The world was doing what it does, moving at its own pace without apology. I am finally doing the same.